Hey everybody, Jack Lips Painting here with another tutorial in the Just the Tip series, and today we are focusing on the Salamanders. It's going to be a really cool green workup for these Salamanders, and we're going to start off with black primer from Stynylrez. Stynylrez is made by Badger Airbrush Company. It's really great stuff. Highly recommend picking it up. I like this a lot more than Vallejo airbrush primer. It reacts a lot better on the model and goes through the airbrush much nicer. Definitely recommend. Alright, we're going to start off with our base coat of Game Extra Opaque. This is Game Color Extra Opaque line. Heavy black green. It's a really dark black green color, and we're just going to have this kind of really thin in the airbrush, so kind of a 2-to-1 ratio, 3-to-1 ratio of paint to flow improver. Just kind of spray all over the model, basically just tinting the black enough to where it looks green, but we're not totally covering up everything, right? And we're keeping that high spray angle so that our shadows stay nice and dark. And from there, we're going to go up to Warpstone Glow. This is going to be kind of our mid-tone highlight color. And I'm going to be spraying that through the airbrush. Again, really high angle of attack on the mini here. And just starting the workup for our gradient. This is going to establish our green color on the Salamander's armor. Just hitting all of the upper portions of the model and starting to establish that gradient. I've gotten to where I really like spraying down the center line of certain parts, so you can see me kind of doing the center line of the legs there and the arms, kind of a center line down the chest pattern, and working it from there. It gives a really high contrast style and really makes the armor pop off of the model, and keeps the shadows dark and our highlights just ultra vibrant. So give that a shot. Play around with it, see if you like it. And after that, we're going to go with Game Air Scorpion Green. This is really going to establish the Salamanders color scheme from the darker green color scheme that you would normally see for a chapter like, say, the Dark Angels, that keep a really dark kind of black-green color, whereas the Salamanders are more of a primary green that goes up into a really bright green. That kind of dragon, lizard, snake green kind of look that I like for the Salamanders. So kind of reinforcing those center line highlights that we used with Warpstone Glow. I'm going to be going over those with the Scorpion Green. And this paint's a little finicky. I do love the color, but I don't love using it, if that makes sense. Like, Scorpion Green is kind of finicky. It doesn't really want to cooperate. It's almost like a yellow. The pigment is really thin, so when you're spraying this paint, make sure to take your time. Don't try to force the Scorpion Green to cover more than it wants to, because what'll end up happening is you'll spray it too much and you'll end up having it too wet, and the air will actually pool it on the model, and it'll create this like nasty spiderweb kind of pooling effect, and you don't want that. It looks really nasty and you have to cover it up. So just take your time, let it build up, do a little bit of paint and then let it dry out, and then do a little bit of paint, let it dry out. Use the air from the airbrush to help it dry out really fast, and just do that until you can build that color up nice and smooth. Alright, and for our last highlight, I'm going to mix what's left of the Scorpion Green with our Stynylrez white primer to get kind of an off-white that has that Scorpion Green tint to it. And very carefully, we're just going to do some tiny little spot highlights on the brightest parts of the model to really make that Scorpion Green pop out. It's going to give us that really high contrast kind of comic book style that I like doing on my minis. But it's not going to go over the top because we're not going to a pure white, and we're being very minimal with it. So we're just going to catch the little brightest, shiniest points of the model where the light would be kind of glinting off of the model, and popping that green out even more. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to switch over to some model color black, and we're going to be blocking in all of our joint pieces. So I'm going to start off here in the kind of crook of the knee and paint in these little rubber joints with some model color black. Just doing a base coat for these really simple workups, since these videos kind of focus on getting a whole army up to tabletop ready level. You can highlight this with some stuff like charcoal or tire black or even some darker grays. Super easy to get that rubber look going, but we're just focusing on getting everything blocked in. Now we're going to go to Necro Gold from scale 75. This is the best base color gold in the business. I highly recommend you get yourself a set of the scale 75 metallics. They are awesome. It is painting metallics on easy mode, and we're going to block in our little chest eagle, skull wings, chest emblem, whatever you want to call it. We're going to block that in with scale 75 Necro Gold. Super easy, and go from there. Alright, now we're going to go to our wash. This is the Army Painter wash system. Got some quick shade, mixed medium, and some dark tone. A little bit of water in there. We're just going to put that all over. And people ask me the ratio that I use for these washes, and it's kind of a hard question because it's really based on feel. I don't have an exact science for how I mix paint or mix washes. Just start off with your dark tone, then add increasing drops of the mixed medium and mix those each time you add a drop until you get it to where you want it. If it's too bright, I think it turns gray on you, because the mixed medium will do that. Just add more dark tone and a little squirt of water to help it flow better, and you'll do just fine. It's just based on feel. Like, it takes some getting used to do this kind of wash system compared to the Citadel system, where you just dip your brush in the pot and then slather it on the model. So just give it a shot, experiment with it until you figure it out. It's pretty intuitive once you get there. It's just not an exact science. Alright, now we're going to do our edge highlights with some Scorpion Green, and just going to focus on the hard edges around the model, kind of wick away any excess moisture on the brush using our little thumb palette there, and then what I call the half-assed dry brush method, where you just kind of scrape the edge of the brush over the hard edges. And sometimes you'll have to scribe some lines, but that's pretty easy. Just wick away most of the excess moisture paint from the brush, so it's nice and clean, and just scribe those lines. And again, Scorpion Green is a little finicky. Sometimes you have to err on the side of caution and draw in those lines a little thin, a little transparent, and then just go over them a few times. So if you aren't a fan of scribing lines, just focus on the hard edges and use the side of the brush to scrape the edge highlights on there. It's really easy. Alright, here he is, finally done up to a nice tabletop level. Started off with some Game Extra Opaque Heavy Black Green, then going to Warpstone Glow, followed by Scorpion Green, and then we mixed that Scorpion Green with some Stynylrez White Primer, and from there did all of our joints with model color black, used Necro Gold for the chest eagle, and then went with the Army Painter wash system. Hope you guys enjoyed this. This is the last Loyalist chapter in the Just the Tip series, and next is Chaos, so make sure you check that out, and I'll see you next time.